Getting after the quarterback is a huge part of the game in the modern NFL. Have the Seahawks done enough building firepower at the edge position going into 2025? As we continue our training camp previews, we're going to be diving headfirst into that essential question here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined as always here on our Tuesday show by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s listening in. Thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Whether you're tuning in from Salem, Oregon or Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a special thanks to each and every one of you. We are nearly closing in on a week until the start of Seahawks training camp. The rookies reported today, actually, for the Seahawks, but the start of actual camp just a little over a week away. We're going to keep diving into some key storylines, some essential questions as we get closer to the start of the 2025 season. And we're going to be looking at numbers 25 through 21 on our 90-man countdown as we crawl into the top 25 Seahawks of 2025. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Today's NFL, whether run purists like you and I, want to necessarily agree with it or not, it is a passing league. The NFL is all about throwing the football and who can get after the quarterback. And the Seattle Seahawks have some continuity on that side of the football in terms of their outside linebackers, their edge spots. Boye Mafe's coming back. Derek Hall's coming back. They're hoping to have a healthy Uchenna Nwosu, which hasn't happened very much the last couple of years. And they added Demarcus Lawrence to the mix, a four-time Pro Bowler previously starring for the Dallas Cowboys, to give them another really physical edge setter that can still get after the quarterback. The big question is, though, with all the returning players, the age of a couple of these players, some of the injury history. Demarcus Lawrence missed most of last season due to a Lisfranc fracture. Uchenna Nwosu's missed 11 games in each of the past two seasons, 22 total in the regular season. So you've got injuries, you've got age concerns. The big question is, do the Seahawks have enough firepower at the edge positions going into this 2025 season?
Corbin, I'm not convinced that they do. And that's the thing. I almost wonder if we could rephrase this essential question among the edge group is Uchenna Nwosu healthy? That to me is what this comes down to, because as you said, he's missed 11 games each of the past two seasons. I think that when you look at what Boye Mafe did a year ago, he had 6 sacks. 3 of them came in the first 3 games. The other 3 were spread out over the final 12. Now, he went through a knee injury that forced him to miss a couple of games, but still, is he going to be able to bounce back? Derek Hall's 8 sacks a year ago sound really, really good, especially when you consider the fact that his rookie season, he had 0 sacks. So obviously that's exciting. But at the same time, when you really watch his sacks on tape, you see a lot of coverage sacks of him actually being beaten initially and then just kind of grinding and working his way to the quarterback and ultimately getting a sack. But they weren't the kind of ones that I think that he just created the play his own. On his own, excuse me. So I do think that the edge rusher spot is something that the Seahawks should be looking at. Again, if they have any inkling that Uchenna Nwosu is not going to be back to his full self, that this is a club that is going to be able to make a deep postseason run, and you and I have both been in agreement, we think that this is a playoff-bound caliber team, then there are a number of veteran edge rushers that are available. And we've thrown about names like a TJ Watt, but just recently is Von Miller, 36-year-old future Hall of Famer, has at least reportedly had 3 teams that are interested in him. I wonder if the Seahawks aren't one of those teams. We talked about the fact that John Schneider has kind of squirreled away a lot of extra money, maybe to make some kind of splash move right before training camp. Von Miller is one of those veterans who's not going to need a training camp. He's going to be in shape. He's probably not going to want to go to a training camp, frankly. But at the same time, when you consider the fact you're talking about a guy who has 129 and a half career sacks, he's a 2-time Super Bowl winner, a 1-time Super Bowl MVP. Look, I know that he didn't start the last couple of seasons for the Buffalo Bills, but even coming off the bench, he had 6 sacks for the Bills a year ago. He might be that kind of coach on the field that the Seahawks could be looking for to be kind of a finisher as far as just a pure pass rush specialist.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed out the name Von Miller because that's not one we've talked about. As you mentioned, we talked trades for TJ Watt or Trey Hendrickson or maybe bringing in Jadeveon Clowney. There's a couple of other veteran edges that are still out there that'll be trying to land a new team when training camp opens. Or in the case of Von Miller, I mean, if you read what the agent said, very clearly, Matt might not even want to participate in training camp. As you said, at this stage of his career, these are the kind of players when you get in your mid-30s like that, you've been through the rigors of training camp. You know what you need to do to get yourself ready for the season. Those are the guys that you can trust can show up in mid to late August and be ready to go and give you some snaps. With that being said, I want to, before we go back to Von Miller, I just want to kind of look at a couple of the guys that are returning for the Seahawks in this group. Because to me, I think if you can keep all 4 of their top guys healthy, I think they do have enough firepower here with the rest of the stuff they have on defense. And in particular, I want to point out Derek Hall, because last year we got to see that huge jump from him. He didn't have a single sack his rookie season. He had 8 sacks this last year. And as we've talked about, I felt like his play kind of flatlined a little bit in the last 5 or 6 games. And I do think part of that was this was the first year that he had extended action. And I think it does take players a year or 2 of playing 16 or 17 games to really be able to keep your production up and knowing what you have to do physically to maintain your performance over the course of a season. But what really jumped out to me, Rob, he had 20 quarterback hits last year. Derek Hall was getting after the QB. He was consistently turning pressures into not just pressures, he was blasting quarterbacks. He was hitting guys. And that's just the next level of pressures. And the fact that he had that many, and he's only 24, he is still a very young player that it feels like could be another one. Wait, he was in year 1 in Mike McDonald's defense. Derek Hall, if he takes another big step forward, he might become the alpha of this edge rushing group. It isn't going to be Uchenna Nwosu. It might be Derek Hall, and Boye Mafe is still a young player that is still ascending. There's a chance that he could be a double-digit sack guy. So, like, if you could get big seasons from both those guys and Demarcus Lawrence and Uchenna Nwosu stay healthy, that's all I really care about with those 2 guys. I'm confident that if they're on the field, they are going to produce. But the question is going to be, can they stay on the field? And that leads back to the discussion about Von Miller, because personally, I don't think Von Miller is a great scheme fit for what Mike McDonald likes to do. But at the same time, Seattle's not looking for somebody. I don't think in terms of adding firepower that they need to go out and get. I mean, if TJ Watt becomes available, then absolutely, you got to be looking into that. But you have the chance to add somebody else to this rotation. And Von Miller, as you said, he didn't play a ton of snaps last year, but he still got 6 sacks. He still can get after the quarterback as a pure pass rusher. If you are just looking to add a 5th guy that can be impactful and really cause problems as a situational rusher, Von Miller can absolutely still do that as well as anybody. So I think you have to consider the scheme thing. If you were asking him to play a ton of snaps, which at this age, I wouldn't think he would do that. But I don't think the scheme fit is going to be as big of an issue if it's more about, hey, it's 2nd and long or it's 3rd and long, go get in there and just hunt the quarterback. Von Miller can still do that. So in that sense, it would make sense. And I don't think you would have to break the bank at this stage of his career with the type of player he is now being a situational rusher. You could have a lot of incentives baked into a contract and say, hey, if you want to go out and get 8 sacks for us, go for it. But I think that's the kind of deal you'd be looking at. In that sense, it would make sense for Seattle.
Well, and that's one of the things. I appreciate that you kind of push back a little bit on this talk of a Von Miller or any other outsider being brought into the Seahawks, because I've argued when it comes to the offensive line that if Seattle is going to just bring in, put a Band-Aid on as far as a veteran player, then you're going to stunt the growth of the young players that you feel like have some potential. And so to your point there about Derek Hall and Boye Mafe in particular, then yeah, if you were going to bring in a player like a Von Miller or anybody else, then you are obviously going to have to take a Boye Mafe or a Derek Hall off of the field, or obviously a Uchenna Nwosu or Demarcus Lawrence. I expect Lawrence to play along the defensive line a little bit more, maybe not be the stand-up edge rusher I think Von Miller would be in McDonald's system. But at the same time, again, your point is well made. I think that, again, if the Seahawks feel confident that they already have the veterans in place and Demarcus Lawrence and Uchenna Nwosu especially, and they feel confident that they're looking healthy and primed to kind of bounce back after a couple of injury-plagued seasons, then I think you just roll with what you got, because I am a big fan, especially of Boye Mafe. I just think that he is an ascending star, and he's entering the final year of his rookie contract. I think that he's going to splash. I think that we're talking about a 10-plus sack kind of a guy this year. And then Derek Hall, while I was a little bit critical of his production, I'm not so sure I believe that he is going to be able to replicate the 8 sacks a year ago or the 20 quarterback hits. At the same time, he is one of my favorite players on the Seahawks just because of the violent way in which he plays the game, and the fact that I do believe that he is a player who still does have some untapped potential. So again, it does come down to the contract that Von Miller or one of these other veteran edge rushers might be looking for. I do believe that this is a Seahawks squad that could use a couple of extra pieces to really be able to kind of get themselves over the hump. So I think that because the edge rusher role is such a prioritized role in all of the NFL, I think you have to kind of keep your eyes on it. But at the same time, if the Seahawks feel confident in what they already have in the fold, I think that they have one of the better edge rushing groups in all of the NFL, and they should be just fine.
I am with you on one thing. I absolutely think that you add another veteran to the mix, because I do think that there is a huge gap from the top 4 guys to everyone else that's on the depth chart. They might have some young undrafted players that have some potential to play for them at some point, but I don't know that any of those guys are fits for what Mike Macdonald wants out of his edges. So if you can get somebody like a Von Miller or Clowney, or if there's a trade in the works for one of these guys, then I think John Schneider is going to absolutely explore those. But if you can get a veteran off the free agent scrap heap that can still give you some contributions as a reserve or rotational player, then I think you have to look into that, because Mike Macdonald's historically liked having 5 edges in his rotation dating back to his time in Baltimore and then last year for the Seahawks. When we come back, we're going to go from the trenches on defense to the secondary, and it's time to talk some contracts. What has happened in New Jersey and how that is going to potentially impact John Schneider and the Seahawks, their thought process with locking up a couple of their young stars. We'll get to that up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Have you ever decided the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or you can even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals. They offer clear seat views and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, and that makes it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming game. Maybe you're looking at the Mariners after the All-Star break and hoping to see Cal Raleigh, the big dumper himself, bash a couple more home runs. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined as always by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Going from the trenches, at least off the edge, back to the secondary, the Seahawks have one of the most talented young cornerback rooms in the NFL. We talked about this in one of our training camp previews last week, Rob, looking at Witherspoon and Reek Woolen and some of the other intriguing young talents the Seahawks have there. But those 2 players I mentioned in particular, It's about time to give up some big paydays potentially for those players. Riq Woolen, there's more urgency. He's going into the last year of his rookie deal. He's a 5th-round pick formerly, so you don't have a first-round pick, 5th-year option at your disposal. You do have that next spring with Devin Witherspoon when he becomes eligible to start negotiating for an extension. You can do what they did with Charles Cross. You can give that 5th-year option, and it gives you a much bigger window to be able to negotiate that next contract. But the reason we're talking about these two guys, not just because Riq Woolen is entering that last year of his rookie deal and could potentially be a candidate to get extended before training camp opens next week, you've got a lot of deals that are happening around the league this week, a number of extensions. The New York Jets throwing a lot of money around for their young talent. They re-signed Garrett Wilson on Monday. And then today, Sauce Gardner setting a new record, $30.1 million per year on his extension with the New York Jets. And so the market is reset again. And honestly, Rob, this feels like this is happening nonstop at the cornerback position because Derek Stingley last year got a $30 million per year contract. And right before that, J.C. Horn, $25 million. Patrick Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year, he is now the 5th highest paid corner, and he just got paid in 2024. Like, you're seeing all these high-priced corners, they are just taking a bigger piece of the pie. And now Seattle's got a very fascinating situation to watch because Woolen right now is the one that's going to be the first priority to try to figure out what to do because he is going to be a free agent next year. And you got Devin Witherspoon too. I think you can make arguments if you're in the camp for both those players that you can say, well, if some of these guys are getting that kind of money, then why not me? And that puts John Schneider in a bit of a bind because there is not another team in the NFL that has 2 corners making more than $16.5 million per year on the same team. You're looking at Seattle facing maybe not just the possibility, but the guarantee they're going to have to pay that kind of money to keep both these players.
Well, and that's why I think it's going to be very difficult to be able to keep both. And so I think that the strong likelihood is that Seattle is going to choose Devin Witherspoon at the same time, as you noted it before. He's got a couple of more years under contract where he's going to have to prove his durability. He has, of course, been very durable here in the NFL. But at the same time, again, we're talking about undersized player, whereas compared to Riq Woolen, who is 6'4", 195 pounds, and Sauce Gardner, 6'3", 195 pounds. I mean, they are kind of the physical prototypes, and you look at Sauce Gardner, and look, I think that a couple of years ago, I think that you could have made a strong argument that Riq Woolen, after leading all of the NFL in interceptions with 6 and being voted a Pro Bowler as a 5th-round rookie, as you mentioned, that there's a lot of people out there who would say, hey, the statistics between Riq Woolen and Sauce Gardner are similar, maybe even in Woolen's favor. I mean, this is a guy who's got 41 career pass breakups, and 11 of those he intercepted. He also has 5 fumble recoveries. At the same time, he's given up 14 touchdown receptions, at least according to Pro Football Focus, over those 3 seasons. Whereas Sauce Gardner, who only has, 3 interceptions in his career, and he's given up 40 pass breakups. He's only surrendered 3 total touchdowns, 1 touchdown surrendered each of the past 3 seasons, again, according to PFF. So clearly what the New York Jets are paying for is the prototypical size, the ability to blanket one side of the field, and the ability to kind of lock down that one side of the field, not give up the touchdowns. And that's one of the areas in which Devin Witherspoon has certainly been more consistent over the first couple of seasons than Riq Woolen. While he only has 1 career interception, a 97-yard interception return, we all remember a couple of years ago as a rookie, he didn't have a single interception a year ago. At the same time, he has only allowed a couple of touchdowns per season, 7 total, 4 last year, 3 the year before that. I expect that we're going to see Devin Witherspoon's value only rise as he plays more positions in Mike Macdonald's system. But again, he's going to have to remain durable. But either way, there's no question about it. The Seahawks have 2 of the most gifted cornerbacks in all of the NFL, and they are going to eventually be paid as such. I think that the Seahawks are feeling pretty good about it because obviously they're not paying either of them big dollars just yet, and they're still getting that type of a production. But it's going to be interesting to see. 2025 is a massive year for Seattle's cornerbacks, especially, of course, Riq Woolen. If he is able to drop those touchdowns allowed number, and of course, revert back to the playmaking ability that he had shown earlier in his career without the peaks and valleys physicalities of his game, then he stands to be right there in the mix with some of those other cornerbacks that you just listed as far as getting 20, 25, maybe even $30 million per season.
I think when you put his traits, obviously the physical tools he has, there isn't a guy on that list that we had that is as physically gifted as what Riq Woolen is, because in my opinion, he's the most physically gifted corner that's ever been in the NFL. Like 6'4", long arms, 4.26 speed. Like, you're kidding me? There's never been a guy like that, but there's still been too much inconsistency to his game. There's still been a little bit too much rawness to his game. You got to remember that he was a receiver until midway in his college career. So a lot of times he can make up for that lack of experience just because of how physically and athletically gifted that he is and the ball skills as a converted receiver. But he has got to continue to work on being more consistent. That's got to be the number one thing. I will say this, Rob. I think in today's NFL offensive and defensive line, that is where you've really got to be spending your money. And the Seahawks at times have not done that on the offensive side of the ball, where they have gone cheap with their offensive line. If the Seahawks are going to try to dedicate a little bit more money to that side of the ball down the line, it's going to be tricky to do that if you're paying two corners top 5 money, which I think Riq Woolen can absolutely get. He hits free agency next year. He is getting $25 million per year minimum. He is going to get the bag. Teams are going to be extremely enthused about his athletic skill set and the fact he's been a Pro Bowler and he has played at a high level, albeit inconsistently. And Devin Witherspoon is another guy. If Witherspoon ever hit free agency, there would be a bidding war for him because of all the things that he does well. His blitzing, his hitting as a run defender, the physicality, the instincts. And I think if he plays more in the boundary this year, more opportunities to make plays on the football that he is definitely capable of doing. So you can make arguments that both these guys are going to be getting that $25, $26 million per year plus. If both of them are getting that range, I don't see how John Schneider can do that. If you had two guys that were just a little over 20 million per year, if I'm Schneider, I'm starting to think a little bit, because I think you have to just consider, are they going to be foundational pieces? If Mike McDonald comes into your office and says, hey, I want my secondary to be the strength of my defense, and I think I need to have both these guys. If Mike McDonald makes that clamor and says that's what I want, and John Schneider abides, hey, let's give him the personnel that he needs in this defense, then I could see it being worth it to have both those guys at those price points. But man, the compensation or what you're going to have to do at other position groups to be able to do that, you're going to have to let some good players go in other spots that are going to be up for free agency. And that might end up being somebody like a Boye Mafe, who's going to be potentially commanding a lot of money. So I do think that this might be the biggest set of decisions that John Schneider's got on his plate the next year to year and a half, figuring out what he's going to do with these guys, especially if they both go out and just absolutely ball this year in Mike McDonald's defense.
Yeah, no question about it. That's what's going to make this a fascinating decision for the Seahawks. It's just because, again, we all know the physical traits that Riq Woolen possesses, and his upside is through the roof. He's got to be more consistent if he is going to earn that type of money. Just because there are moments on tape where it is a little spooky, where he is not the reliable open field tackler. He does shy away from contact. For a bigger corner, he doesn't always play big. And so, again, you want to see him iron out his game. But what an opportunity that he's going to get this upcoming season. And I do think it's interesting. I mean, this is, of course, a team that's won Super Bowl. It was kind of led by the Legion of Boom. And so if Seattle decides that they want to try to replicate that and allocate just a disproportional amount of money towards its secondary, then there is precedence here, not only in Seattle, but all throughout the NFL, that, hey, if you have one positional group that is absolutely elite, then they can carry the rest of your squad, or at least be the one that kind of pulls the rest of the squad around a little bit. So I do think that there's a possibility that Seattle do that. That said, again, we're going to have to see like an historic season, I think, from Riq Woolen for him to kind of jump to the front of the line and push Devin Witherspoon a little bit behind, because I think that Seattle is already anticipating number 21 is going to be in a Seattle uniform for an awful long time, certainly longer than his rookie contract, and assuming, of course, knock on wood, that he stays healthy.
When we come back, we get our 90-man countdown to dive into numbers 25 through 21. We're in the top 25, a bunch of really exciting players that we are going to be looking at. Let's get to that up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Morang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12 listening in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. And for your second listen, make sure to check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft feels like it was another lifetime ago, but roster moves and news, they never stop. All these extensions that we just talked about. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Continuing our 90-man countdown, we are inside the top 25. We've got numbers 25 through 21. So, Rob, let's dive in, and we're going to start off with, to me, one of the most important players for the Seahawks going into this season, assuming that he holds on to his starting job. Jalen Sundell may have something to say about that, but we'll see. Right now, I would think that Olu Oluwatimi is going to be the one snapping to Sam Darnold in week 1 against San Francisco. And I thought Oluwatimi, it's interesting. I thought he played okay when he replaced Connor Williams midseason last year. Williams with that abrupt retirement. Go back and watch the film, and I had a much more positive viewpoint of the way that Oluwatimi played. And the stats bared it out, too. He was fantastic in pass protection. I don't think it's a coincidence that Seattle's run game was better the last 6 weeks. Obviously, you can point to Abe Lucas being back in the lineup being a big part of that. But I thought that Oluwatimi blocked really well in the run game for the most part during that time. So for people that are trying to say, well, let's really see what Jalen Sundell can do, Oluwatimi played pretty darn well last season. And just remember, he is only in his third year in the league. He is still a young player that hasn't started a full season yet. I think he is one of the key cogs that could really sway this team from being a 9-10 win team, to being a 12-win caliber team if he can prove himself to finally be that linchpin at center that Seattle's been looking for what feels like most of their existence as a franchise at this point.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Seattle has struggled at the center position for an awful long time, but Oluwatimi hasn't been around as long as some Seahawks fans make it sound. He's only entering his third year, as you said. He's played a total of 28 games. He started 9. According to Pro Football Focus, he didn't allow a single sack a year ago, and the numbers in terms of the running game were an improvement, as you said, over a former high pick in Connor Williams. And of course, Oluwatimi was a 5th-round selection. And to kind of go back to the point we were talking about before, at the cornerback spot, and is Seattle going to be able to, pay as much money to a guy like a Reek Woolen and a Devin Witherspoon? They're going to have to hit on a number of day 3 selections. Oluwatimi has the opportunity to do that and be kind of the long-time center for the Seahawks here. He's got the mind. You know that he has that. And this is a former, Remington Award winner as the nation's best center. And that was in his 1 season at Michigan after previously playing at Virginia and Air Force. So again, this is a guy that is able to make an acclimation to a different offense very, very quickly. And I thought that he played pretty well. He is a really wide-bodied guy who isn't exceptionally quick laterally. So some of those really quick twitch 3 technique kind of guys are going to give him some trouble. And anybody who watched the Minnesota Vikings game that clearly was big in Seattle's evaluation of Sam Darnold. Oluwatimi gave up a sack, or at least not a sack, but a critical pressure to Jahard Ward that wound up being the interception that Geno Smith threw that basically sealed that football game. So there definitely were some rough spots in his tape. But again, you're talking about a player who only started 8 games a year ago. You have to assume that you're going to see some improvement from him, especially when you have the veteran offensive line coaches in John Benton and Rick Dennison are coming in to help him. So as you said, Corbin, I think that it's a really important year for Oluwatimi, a really important position for the Seahawks. Obviously, you're anticipating it's going to be Gray Zabel, the rookie left guard, next to him. So you want the veteran Oluwatimi to be able to kind of coach up the rookie. And again, when you're talking about a player that enters his 3rd season in the NFL with 9 career starts, that's an awful lot of pressure placed upon a very young player.
Coming in at number 24, we're swinging over to the defensive side of the ball, a guy that got his chance last year to show what he can do at a new position. Kobe Bryant comes in for an injured Rayshon Jenkins and plays so well that once Jenkins was healthy, well, you can be our third safety, but you're not getting your starting job back. 3 interceptions, had one they returned for a touchdown against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals in that home win against their division rivals. You saw him come in and make a bunch of really nice tackles. He had the pressure on Aaron Rodgers in the Jets game on 4th down that ended the game. Kobe Bryant just seemed like he came through at all of the critical moments for the Seahawks last year. And now he's got another opportunity here going into the final year of his contract to try to show his worth as a guy that is worth keeping around. And listen, one of the advantages Seattle has here, Nick Emanwari not being a first-round pick, you've got him on second-round money for 4 years under contract. That gives you the flexibility that if you want to pay Kobe Bryant some money to keep him around with Julian Love and Emanwari, you can keep that safety trifecta together for at least a couple of years without it really causing too much friction on your salary cap situation. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic if you're Kobe Bryant. Hey, if I go out and play the way I did, I think Seattle's going to reward me, especially because Mike McDonald just absolutely loves this kid. And why wouldn't you, with his positional flexibility, his ball skills, and just a guy that players on the team seem to gravitate to?
Yeah, he's just such an instinctive, physical player. And you talked about his versatility. I mean, he's played outside corner, he's played nickel, he's played safety. He's still a young player in the final year of his rookie deal. Another day 3 selection, a 4th-round pick a few years back. And again, he's just proven himself to be a playmaker. I mean, this is a guy who's got 6 career forced fumbles, has 3 interceptions a year ago. They were the first 3 of his career, but he talked about basically the game. Well, it wasn't the game ceiling, considering it was the 3rd quarter against the Arizona Cardinals, but it certainly felt like a backbreaker for the Arizona Cardinals in that victory, and of course against the Jets, as you mentioned, against Aaron Rodgers. Kobe Bryant, to me, was one of the real unheralded stars of last season. Mike McDonald's first season, of course, in Seattle, and I just wonder what Kobe Bryant might be able to do with his just a little bit more experience at that spot in McDonald's system. So again, we talked about the cornerback and how much money that the Devil Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen might be getting. What about another former cornerback in Kobe Bryant, who's showing the ability to play basically everywhere? He's going to demand a lot of money on the free agent market as well. So he might be another player that just feels like a true blue Seahawk that the franchise might look at trying to extend now rather than pay more later.
Speaking of extensions, the one big extension that the Seahawks have made this offseason, coming in number 23, Michael Dixon getting his second big deal and once again taking over as the highest paid punter in the NFL. And he has certainly earned it. And I know some fans, when I posted the article after that extension had been announced, there were some fans like, but he hasn't been a Pro Bowler and he hasn't been an All-Pro since his rookie season. Like, why are we shelling out this kind of money? Because he should have been, like, multiple times. There were multiple occasions that he should have been at least a second-team All-Pro. I'm trying to figure out why that hasn't happened, to be honest. Like, if this is a player that just never been able to break through, that'd be one thing. But he was an All-Pro, a first-team All-Pro, his rookie season. And I think he's had at least 2 or 3 years that he's been better than his rookie season since then. But he hasn't been able to get All-Pro consideration. He hasn't been selected to Pro Bowl. This is just one of those examples where you have to look past the resume and you have to look at what he's done statistically, how he has changed games for Seattle's defense by pinning opposing offenses back consistently inside the 5 or 10 yard line. And he is always among the best in net yardage. He has been consistent and he has been dynamic at the punter position. And we know he can run for a 4th down and turn it into a 1st down too, if you absolutely have to have him do that. So to me, Michael Dixon is still one of the very most valuable players in the Seahawks. And there's a reason they paid him the premium they did. He is worth that kind of money.
No, he absolutely is. In my opinion, he is the best punter in the NFL. I mean, just point blank. I just think that the consistency, the durability, the ability to, when you need a deep kick, this is a kicker, or excuse me, a punter that has had at least one punt every single year of his NFL career, travel at least 60 yards, and a couple of seasons in which he's got over 70 yards. Talk about flipping the field. And then you reference the just pinning teams back inside the 5 or 10 yard line. I mean, he had 31 punts inside the 20 a year ago, only 9 touchdowns. So again, 3 out of every 4 times roughly that he has opportunity to pin teams deep, that he is getting inside the 20 or at the 20. So again, he is able to kind of coffin kick teams as well. And so I think that the versatility is so important, because you can't see that in statistics. And so many people out there, a lot of Pro Bowl and all pro voters out there, they're just looking at statistics. They're not watching the game tape, and they certainly are watching the game tape on special teams. I think that for the same reason that you saw Leonard Williams commit number 99, the NFL's top 100, the same reason why these so-called NFL experts out there are predicting the Seahawks to finish 3rd in the NFC West, 7.5 victories this upcoming season. It's the same reason why Michael Dixon has not got another Pro Bowl nomination or All-Pro nomination since that spectacular rookie season. You're right, Corbin. He's been better 4 of the 6 seasons since. He has been better statistically than he was in his rookie season. So that's why he got the best contract in NFL history as a player, and that's why he deserves it.
Our last 2 players in this cluster, we've got an ascending young player, and we've got the ever so old reliable. We've got Derek Hall, who we talked about some in the last segment with his place with the edges. And I love the fact that this guy the motor is what I just have always loved about Derek Hall. But a number of those sacks that he had last year where he was just chasing guys down from behind, and he's relentless. The guy is always going 110%. And that's why I'm not convinced that he couldn't be the guy that comes out and just absolutely explodes this year, because you put just a little bit more together with the effort you're going to get from Derek Hall, that he could go out there and put up big numbers. I want to see more consistency as a run defender, but I think he's more than capable of doing that. And the fact that we're now seeing him rush from both sides effectively, he was really a one-side player at Auburn. He has developed that part of his game in his first couple of years in the NFL. So I think that there's a lot to be excited about, especially with how he has unprompted, as Stacy mentioned yesterday, talked about Demarcus Lawrence and the impact that he's already had on him. I could see Derek Hall being the biggest beneficiary of Lawrence's arrival this year, but he's also going to be listening to a guy that plays in the D-line who isn't his position, because Jarran Reed is the rock of this defense, really. He is the guy that, and it's crazy because I remember when he was early in his career and there were some questions about his maturity and his leadership ability. He got suspended at one point, and here we are now with him being in double-digit seasons, and Jarran Reed has really become that respected, trusted veteran that everybody leans on, that kind of leads by his actions. Like, you watch Jarran Reed on the field, he'll celebrate somebody. Jarran Reed's just going to go out and be a junkyard dog. That's the way that he plays the game. And even last year with his sacks going down from the previous year, he still had a lot of pressures. He still had a lot of quarterback hits, and he was a big part of this run defense improving. He is kind of one of those statement guys that really sets the tone, and then all the young players feed off it. He's going to have another chance to do that this season for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I like how you describe the 2 players, because of course they are on opposite sides of the spectrum in considering their age and and the perception of upside. And yet Jarran Reed, and he's 32 years old at this point, and his sacks did drop from 7 to 4.5 a year ago, and yet he had a career high 15 quarterback hurries. So again, I still think that Jarran Reed is a quality football player. It's funny because he's actually listed on the Seahawks website as their starting nose tackle, and a year ago, of the roughly 700 snaps in which he played, only 20 of them actually came inside at that nose guard position. So it's going to be interesting to see if Seattle continues to play him more of a defensive tackle or as a defensive end when they're using a 3-man alignment. But that to me is, again, one of the greatest things about Jarran Reed. He can climb up on, all over the defensive line. And that he has the girth, he has the strength, he has the knowledge, and he's got a little bit more wiggle than people want to give him credit, that he can be be a very productive player. And again, just the leadership element that he provides. And then kind of going back to Derek Hall a moment ago, and again, we talked about this before, that just the sack numbers jumped this last season. And so considering that he's such a young player, that he is taking to coaching, I do love the fact that you mentioned that he's playing on both sides of the ball. Well, I mentioned Von Miller before. Every single snap I saw of him with the Buffalo Bills a year ago is all at the left stand-up role, so going up against the right tackle. Now, he did have some success in that role, but at the same time, Derek Hall is consistent. He almost just like Cal Raleigh, hitting them from both sides of the plate. Derek Hall's ability to rush from both sides of the defensive formation is one of the reasons why I do think that you may be right. He may just be scratching the surface of his potential.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure that you don't miss a single episode. When we return tomorrow, it is going to be a week away from the start of Seahawks training camp. We're going to talk some more wide receivers because there's a lot of changes at that position, and we're going to be diving into our top 20 in our 90-man countdown. Make sure that you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Go Hawks.